Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Shared Services Joint Committee. Obviously, you know myself, I'm Alistair Bradley, Chair of this committee. Obviously, members in the committee who are present in the room can raise their hand and indicate if they wish to speak. I did think we're anticipating some people joining online. Have we anybody online? I'm expecting Councillor Wilson, so he'll be getting told off if he's not here. But obviously, if you are online, I'm talking to myself now, so I don't know what I'm saying it. Mute your speakers, all the rest of it, and put your hand up online. I'll bring you into the meeting. If the technology fails, try and get people back on. I'm not expecting any fire drills or anything else, so if you could put your phones on silent, I will do that myself as well. And the exit for a fire escape, if there is a fire, is to go out straight out into the courtyard at the back next to the police station. Okay, first item is apologies for absence. Have we got any?
None received, Chair.
Okay, just Peter said he would dial in because I think he's in London. Item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on Monday the 27th of June. Has anybody got any comments on that? Or a stunned silence. Does somebody want to move those as a correct?
I wasn't there, Chair, so...
Anybody who was there like to move them as a correct record? Thank you, David. Anybody like to second those? Thank you, Karen. All those in favour of accepting those minutes, please show, if you're at the meeting. Anybody against? Okay, cool. Right, we only have one substantive report on this meeting today, so probably a symptom of us slightly slowing down the progress. I think this is the quietest meeting in terms of agenda items we've had on a shared services meeting for quite a long time, so hopefully we'll be very straightforward. So we have a report of the... oh, sorry, I've missed out. Declarations. Are there any declarations of interest before we start? I can't follow an agenda, can I? Nina, you should have said something. Any declarations of interest? No. In that case, we're here to discuss the Shared Services Monitoring Report, which is on pages 7 to 34. And Mr. Sinnott, I think, is going to take us through that. Vicky's doing it. Right. Carry on, Vicky. He will chip in. I guarantee it.
I know, yeah.
Let's see if you can try not to. It's a skill.
Bets are on. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. So yes, I'll take you through this monitoring report, which provides an update on the last quarter. This was something that we said we'd bring through as part of the performance management framework for shared services. So within this report, as you'll see at point 5 there, we have an update on staffing and budgets, an update on staff satisfaction, progress against some of the service development objectives, service performance, and then a risk review as well. So just in summary, overall performance across shared services has been good. In terms of the development actions and the development plans, they were something that each shared service put in place as they transitioned into the shared service environment, and those development plans are progressing well. For the Phase 1 shared services, the majority of actions have now been completed as the services become more embedded, and the focus is now on customer and ICT services, and we've got an update on some of the actions against those plans. So there's a short section on background in terms of the monitoring reports, and then we move into savings and budgets. Overall, a quick high-level summary of the savings of 1.6 million savings realised with over 900,000 at Chorley Council and 700,000 at South Ribble. And again, it's just a brief summary of the splits in terms of how those costs are apportioned, or those the splits of those costs. So for, I think that within the bullet points for IT, it's split 40-60 for the infrastructure team, 40 for Chorley, 60 for South Ribble. The events team, which is split 60-40 the other way, and then services that relate entirely to one council, including the town hall and civic staff, are apportioned specifically to Chorley Council in that case. Moving into staff satisfaction. Staff satisfaction with shared services, we use the Pulse survey every 6 months. We last did one in June, and we've repeated that again in September. It asks questions around how staff feel they understand their contribution, their role, and the skills and knowledge needed for their role, and then an overall question on happiness. So in the table there at point 15, you can see that we had over 100 members of shared staff completing this Pulse survey. which represents about 45% of staff in shared services. And overall, we've seen a positive improvement of about 14% in terms of overall happiness, which is good. So you can see there in the table, general improvements against most criteria. And then the table at point 16 goes on to look in more detail specifically at staff satisfaction in customer services and revenues and benefits, which was particularly low in phase 1. This table summarises the performance in that area, in particular in customer services and revenues and benefits. And overall, we're seeing almost 40% increase, which is positive. So you can see the comparisons there in the table, and particularly the bottom line. Overall, I'm happy with my job. We see has improved from 24% in June to 63.4% in September. Still some way to go on that one, and still some improvement to make to get that up to the rest of the services, but positive that it's moving in the right direction. We can see a summary at point 17 of some of the key themes that were raised. So each of the pulse surveys also has a free text option where staff can make comments about wider issues or challenges or observations, and that's a bit more qualitative for us to use when we're looking at where we can improve as well and where we might want to target support. So some of those themes were around, obviously, improved capacity within the teams. We know that there were lots of gaps to fill, and we've now been able to make appointments into those services, and staff are reporting that that's having a positive impact. We do still need to do more in terms of training and development of those new staff, and that's something that we're putting in place a structured programme for. At point 2 there, high workloads across all service areas. We are acting on this and monitoring it carefully. It is expected that it will ease as we get processes and policies aligned. It is part of coming into a shared service and part of that development plan that you often need to look at policies and processes that might have applied separately in each council and look at opportunities to align them so that things can be done more efficiently. But in the meantime, we are looking at capacity and making sure that we are managing workloads carefully so that staff don't feel overpressured. And then the final one there around improvements in Ict and Communications, which I think we acknowledge have been a challenge, but staff have seen some improvement and we will continue to improve that. We now have a dedicated Ict programme team who get together on a regular basis and catch up weekly, including representatives from Transformation and Change and Ict and Communications, to make sure that that programme is being coordinated and we have a clear programme of work. So that's some reflections on the staff survey. Moving into service level development, there is a full breakdown at Appendix 1 of the actions that have been completed in the service development plans, but just some highlights within the report in terms of Phase 1 shared services there at point 21. We're making progress on rolling out the new terms and conditions. So we've briefed all staff on those, lots of visits to various locations and sites to make sure that all staff are aware of what the process for that will be. We're looking at continuing rolling out HR services and systems so that they're accessible to all our staff at all sites, and then some examples of the events that have been delivered and the internal reviews that have taken place to further improve the corporate support and the procurement team. Looking at phase 2 in terms of customer and ICT, as we said last time, the main focus has been on recruiting to some of those vacant posts, which has now happened. And then also looking at some of the policies, processes and general business improvement, and looking at how we can make sure that they're embedded within the service. There at bullet point 4, there is a mention of the training academy, which has been developed for customer services staff, to make sure that all those staff have got a base level of training. It's great that we've brought in lots of new staff, but we need them to be able to start picking up some of the work from the experienced staff. So we've set up a dedicated training academy to be able to undertake that. And then, yes, progress on the ICT plan as I've described. Just moving into the final section at point 22, the next to final section before we get to the risk register. Overall performance for shared services is monitored using the service level indicators. So in addition to indicators for each council's corporate strategy, each of the services also has their own set of local performance measures which they use to track efficiency, productivity and general service outcomes. The full list is in the appendix, and that list is reviewed each year. So services work together to look at their particular priorities and what they need to measure to give them the management information to be able to effectively improve and monitor whether their services are performing. So I think just a broad summary of what's in the appendix there, Appendix B. Generally, most of the indicators are on track, but there are a couple that are off track with an action plan. I think there's 3 FOIs and legal files, and it's worth noting that they're typically things that can be addressed through improvement within the team, and it just helps managers to know where they might need to focus attention or resource to make sure that we're getting on top of some of those things. So we can have a look at those in more detail if you'd like, but they're in the appendix there for you. And then just a summary of the risk register. So 4 risks are identified as medium risk and 2 risks now low risk. The 2 highest risks are organisational disruption and impact on service performance and staff uncertainty and impact on employee wellbeing. They both have a risk score of 9, which means that across the shared services environment they will be likely to occur and have a serious impact if no mitigating actions were taken. But we are putting in place mitigating actions to ensure that those risk scores are brought down, including things like the people strategy that was recently developed, and that includes a range of initiatives and schemes. That's going to be quite a long-term piece of work to support our staff and help to mitigate some of that impact around uncertainty, and to improve wellbeing, considering particularly some of the challenges that we're facing at the moment. Our workforce are experiencing the same as the wider population, so we have got that strategy in place to make sure that we've got a full programme of support and development at different levels of the organisation. So that's a very quick summary. There is the full risk register there in the table, and we're happy to take any questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Before I bring others in, I think it's encouraging that most of the indicators on the top line, staff satisfaction, are going the right way. I mean, a couple come down, but I think that might be a symptom of new staff in place, etc. But I think it's heartening that we've generally improved since the very poor position we were in previously, and therefore I think it's appreciated the efforts that have gone into that, but there is a way to go still. So, in my view, but we will see where that takes us. David.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vicky. It's on exactly that point. I mean, it's obviously very welcome that the staff satisfaction is moving up. But of course, if you've only got a certain number responding, by itself, it doesn't tell you whether the others had simply packed their bags and gone home. They may be so fed up they're not even responding. But you have these focus groups, and on top of that, is the feedback positive from that?
The feedback on the focus groups themselves is positive. I think we have a number of, in addition to the survey, we have a number of different mechanisms for gathering that feedback, accepting the point that for various reasons people either might not have time to complete the survey or, you know, have different views that they want to express in a different forum. So we have the customer service focus groups. We've had a listening day recently where the directors went around the tables and talked to staff as well. And then we also have kind of like the regular team meetings and briefings. So there are a range of things in place so that staff can give feedback in other ways. And the feedback from those focus group sessions is that staff are positive about the recruitment and that there's capacity coming in. I think the useful feedback for us was that all these staff coming in need training, hence the need to set up the training academy and to be able to do that fairly quickly so that we weren't burdening those staff who would, been picking up the majority of the workload for such a period of time through the period of recruitment. So that was really helpful, and we've been able to get that in place with some useful feedback from staff about how operationally that needs to work on a day-to-day basis, because we can't always take people off calls to be able to train other staff. So they've been really helpful in shaping that model. I think there are definitely still things that we need to respond to, and things that we need to kind of continue to work on, hence continuing to have these focus groups so that we can maintain that dialogue. But I would say that that's definitely been a useful forum for that.
Okay, thank you. And before we pull in, I think the appendices, I looked in the appendices, there was a lot of key indicators, weren't there, about the customer care, about times to respond and number of calls abandoned and what have you, which again would suggest that we're performing better, although again, perhaps a long way away from the aspiration, and therefore I imagine staff are slightly happy they're doing a better job, to be quite honest with you, you know what I mean, as well as everything else, because it's it's hard work being in an organised in a setup that's not functioning properly. Paul.
Thanks, Chair. And I agree, Alistair, with what you were saying there and what David's been saying. We've never said, have we, that things are perfect. And we've openly accepted as a committee that there's been challenges in particular areas of shared services, and we've took it on the chin with the staff and looked to deal with it. And the feeling I get from the report, Vicky, here that you presented to us today is that the improvements are starting to fully embed now, and we're seeing improvements across the board. So it is pleasing to see that the 24% overall satisfaction in Revs and Bends and customer services has gone up significantly, but we're also keen to see more of the staff actually feedback to us directly. Now, and something that you said about the focus groups, David, as well, I fully agree with. We've had some challenges in South Ribble regarding the South Ribble leisure, and Chris and the team dealt with that by developing a focus group, particularly to speak to the staff one-on-one, and it's worked, and it's worked really well. So that's an area where perhaps we should continue to focus with the focus group, should we say? For me, Chair, I think that the full rollout of the ICT improvements is critical across the board in shared services for us to really move ahead. Now we're seeing quick wins with the ICT, but also it's not as quick as we'd like it to be, and we all know the reasons why. Asim shared that with us, that the particular challenges he's having with rolling out the hardware, but I do think that will bring the improvements we're looking to see for our staff, because the staff, as you say, want to do a good job, but we need to make sure they're provided with the equipment to do that job. On the calls, I've got to mention the call. The calls are something that really, was a real challenge for us earlier on in the year. So I'm just trying to find the page. It's on page 32, isn't it? Again, they're improving now. It's good to see there are improvements. I do not like that calls abandoned KPI, because it's not reflective, I don't think. And we've had that discussion before, haven't we? That when you're listening in to a call and it's giving you some advice that says, go to the website, you might go to the website and abandon the call. So it's not always a KPI that is a reflection of the service. And I think we do need to look at that again. And obviously for South Ribble, we need to see that 6-minute 52 average time reduced, and we're still working on that. And we're aware that on our side of things, as I say, in South Ribble, we've just employed a load more support staff and apprentices in Gateway. So Gary and the team have managed to fill the vacancies. But overall, I think we'd all accepted there was a bit of a perfect storm with the call answering machine, call answers, and the number of calls we were receiving earlier in the year. But it's good to see there's been significant improvements. But as you said, there's more that we can do. The one final point on the risk register, I do think we do need to be cognizant of money, of finance. The Chancellor has announced today that there is going to be further public, cuts, austerity. I don't like using that word, but there are going to be further, the tightening of the purse strings in the public sector again. I think we need to be cognizant of that, and hopefully the risk register, as the officers do every month, is updated accordingly, because I do think funding is going to become more and more of a challenge for us. And finally, Chair, can I ask, does this report go to the individual cabinets now, or is it just shared within the committee? Because if it's only shared with the committee, I think it'd be most helpful if it was sent out to all councillors if you were happy to support that. Thank you.
Yeah, so it doesn't go as a matter of course to any other committee, but we can always share it with all councillors can see it, but we can also explicitly share it with councillors so they know it's there and they can see it.
Happy to do that. Okay. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vicky, for your report. I've just got a couple of queries. One of them is about the staff survey, and it says 45% of all shared services staff completed the survey. Does that percentage include the ICT staff and the customer service and revenue and benefits, or was that done separately?
It was all in the same service.
It was done on the same service,
Yeah,
was
on
it?
the same survey, yeah.
Okay, so we still have 63.4%. I know it's an improvement in June, but there's still quite a lot of work to do there, and you've explained before. And on the number of calls that have been abandoned and calls answered within 90 seconds, and I proved that the figures have improved, but they've not improved significantly. And are there any targets for improvement going forward?
I don't know them off the top of my head at the moment. I'd have to check. We can, in terms of the performance targets generally,
Yes.
We do have, I think, performance targets against those ones, but I'd need to check what they are. We've not set any as part of this. They'll be set through the service. So I'd have to, unless anybody else knows.
I think Paul thinks that they have them. You have them in Southwell, and I'm fairly sure we do as well.
So each council has a slightly different approach. The calls answered within 90 seconds is a South Ribble, was originally a South Ribble target, so there is a South Ribble target for it. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's far higher than this. And Chorley has targets more around abandoned call rates
And satisfaction.
and customer satisfaction in its corporate survey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you all right with that? Any other questions or comments? Alan?
Yeah, thanks very much, Alistair. A couple of things, really. One, and I'm sure Kim will agree with this, that a lot of what we've got on ICT in here relates to staff. But one of the things, we had the member sport working group here, and there was a lot of criticism regarding the IT structure for councillors. And I'm just wondering whether that couldn't be brought in somewhere that, that a review is needed. I know that report will come probably to the next council, won't it?
Without breaking any confidence, this has already been raised with the top team up there about dealing with it, because I wasn't very happy with the feedback I got from the last all members meeting in Chorley. Members working group, sorry, in Chorley.
Yeah. Just follow up, as I say, I don't know whether that's parochial just to Chorley or whether that actually fits. Another one just to, if I could raise, and it is about the call abandon rate. I'm just picking up something you said, Paul. The call abandon rate, that's not really a good measure, but I think the number of calls answered within 90 seconds is a good measure. And what you mentioned about ICT, there's further in that report that there's less hits now on the Chorley website. So it's not people leaving that call to come on the website, it is within the call structure. Or it's people who've previously rung and emailed or accessed at the same time. Double users. Yeah. I don't know, it might be worth in due course, and I don't think we do it now because I think we've been more focused on doing the doing, but I think in due course, as hopefully we'll see another improvement in the next quarter, to develop some more, and I'm sure Asim has this because it's his kind of thing in it, sophisticated analysis of what's happening, and I think we could maybe share that with members of this group and obviously the individual councils, because I think that would be useful to know what we think's happening. Whether it's actually happening or not is another matter, but anecdotally we're also seeing a reduction in the number of people complaining about waiting longer times, which is good, but I think it depends what time of day and what day of the week you're ringing on. If it's 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, I think everybody's doing it, so it's about choosing your time a little bit, isn't it? But I imagine that's going to be a constant problem. Okay. Margaret.
Thank you. Somewhere in the report, we talk about the equalisation of the staff, the shared services and the ones that are not in shared services. And bearing in mind what Councillor Foster has just mentioned about, obviously, the pressures on the budget and things like that. How long do we anticipate that it will actually take to get it all organised and equalised? And do we have any sort of figures for how much it's going to cost taking this forward?
So we've set a programme now to roll out the new terms and conditions to all staff. That has started and we've briefed all the teams and services and we'll work through them one by one. Probably over the next 12 months it'll take for us to work through all of the services, 12 to 18 months. That's because of the process that we go through and the way that we want to engage teams and individuals and make sure that everybody's understood their own personal individual circumstances when moving on to the new terms and conditions. Lots of queries and things like pensions come into it, and it often is an opportunity for people to pick up things that they'd wanted to ask about for a while in terms of their own terms and conditions. So we've allocated around 3 months per service, and we'll be working around each of the services in turn, going through that process of setting out what it will involve, what the individual circumstances are. Then there's a short period of consultation, then we move over. We've done an early impact analysis right across both organisations to look at roughly where we think people should map over to the new terms and conditions, because it also involves looking at a new grading structure as well. So we've done that work to make sure that everybody maps over to the relevant point, and that's also given us an early indication of costs, which should be broadly neutral, and there shouldn't be a significant additional cost to the process of moving people onto the new terms and conditions. But that's a piece of work that we'll continue to monitor as we go through. and as we work on each service, we'll be able to assess it in more detail.
No, it was... Yeah, just the point about it being cost neutral. If you're increasing the overall package through a service, I don't understand how it can be cost neutral, because the thing...
How are you doing it, and can we do it more? I agree.
Yeah, it just...
Yes, yeah, I'm same wavelength. Go on.
It's it's the broader package of terms and conditions that are improving. So it's leave, sickness, absence. It's some of the non kind of pay related benefits that will improve. So that's and where it is kind of pay related, we're looking to map over onto an equivalent grade. And so there shouldn't be a significant additional cost. But we will kind of keep an eye on it as we go through. We've done that early mapping. At the moment, it doesn't suggest that there should be a significant cost. It is mainly the broader package of conditions that people will get access to. So it is things like the leave allowance, the sickness allowance, there's some of the additional benefits packages as well that we have that form that part of the wider terms and conditions.
This is a quarter report, and you're saying it's going to take about 3 months to do each particular section. So come the next quarter, could we have the first update of the first ones that you're doing, so that we can see how it's progressing and how things are mapping out, and how many sections are there to do if it takes 3 months to do one?
I've got the list, so we'll be able to... 6 sessions. 6.
We said 18 months, didn't you?
It's because it's each of the services of all and the varying sizes. Some of the smaller ones will be a bit quicker. Some of the bigger ones, if we're looking at kind of the neighbourhood services, for example, will take a bit longer. So we may be able to overlap some aspects of the process as we become more familiar with it. We want to make sure that we give it enough time for at least the first few, so that we can really understand where the queries are going to come from staff, what their individual kind of perspectives are. So we'll probably give 3 months at least for the first few services. We're starting with some of the community services, and then we'll move into other areas over a period of time, hopefully being able to overlap some. But I will be able to give an update after the first sort of quarter, of where we've been able to get to.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful. Could I just have...
You can, just to start when will that start?
I've started it now.
Different subject. Have we any idea of when or if the museum in Leyland will reopen, or where it will reopen?
I'm allowing that to come in because it's nothing to do with shared services, is it? But I'll let it
It sits within a shared service. But we've got to be clear that it's not closed at the moment because of sharing. It's closed at the moment because there were some significant issues with the building in terms of mould and damp, which had led to what one of the museum curators called the worst, I was about to say best, but the most extensive silverfish, I think, infestation. So it's basically everything's had to be kind of closed down. All the artefacts have had to be frozen to kill all the stuff, and it's taken quite a long time because obviously there's a lot of artefacts. I'll find out the exact, unless Councillor Foster may know better than me, but I'll find out when we're aiming to get to on it.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chris. Margaret, it was asked at the last council meeting, and there was a detailed response given.
I can't remember the response.
But we'll send it. We'll send you a copy of it all, because somebody wrote to us and asked us, and so there's a detailed response. And it's they're hoping to look at the options. Well, they will be looking at the options in the first quarter of next year, with a paper coming back to the Cabinet and Council. So I'll send you the answer again.
Thank you, if you would.
Okay. We're all going now. Karen first and then Kim.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about savings and budgets. It's on item 10. It says overall there's been an excess of £1.6 million saving, 900,000 at Chorley and over 700,000 at South Ribble. Has that? What period of time does that cover?
That was in the whole period. The reason we've not put in the whole lot here
Thank you. Just 2 questions. Just following on from Alan's point earlier. From a Chorley side of things, at the last members' support working group meeting, a number of members raised issues about members of the public and councillors ringing the call centre, being put through to a particular team or department or whatever, but then getting cut off in the interim. And I raised that, and I'm told it's because the people that are in the call centre might be putting the phone down before the individual has got through to the other end. But I just wondered, will they be being recorded as abandoned calls? If you could clarify that, because there were quite a few examples. It wasn't just 1 or 2 moaning or gripes or anything. And then the other one, on the focus groups, I've worked in a couple of organisations that have gone through like massive structural changes and stuff, and I know in good and bad ways. But I know some of those sort of management structures have done focus groups, and they pick the same people, or they pick the managers pick the people that'll give the constructive feedback, and they go back to the same people every time. And I just wonder whether or not how it's operated, and whether or not you're actually getting to the people that might be disillusioned or might not be saying anything and just moaning about it to themselves. Thanks.
I apologise for Kim's cynicism, but go on, you've got to answer that.
Vicky's not looking up on that one. I feel fairly confident that we are getting to the right people. So, as Vicky said earlier, we do this in a number of different ways. So we do everything ranging from everyone at the council getting together and people sitting on tables, but we also, for example, within customer services, we have staff rep groups, and that was self-selecting from those groups, also encouraged by the union. So we encourage the union, who are obviously playing a representative role as well. And then we are also picking up stuff via the surveys and other places. So the point that Vicky was making earlier is that we might not manage to get everyone in an individual method of collecting it, which is why we do it in lots of other places. Some people don't mind doing it through a survey and writing it down, but would never ever say anything face-to-face. And some people don't want to fill in a survey, but they are quite happy to say it face-to-face. So that's why we're carrying on trying to do it in different ways and different manners. And on the first one, in terms of abandoned call, the honest answer is I don't know, but we can find out. I mean, it has already been, as Councillor Bradley says, the point has already been taken very strongly from members, particularly at Chorley, around some of the issues that are raised at the member support working group. So we are aware of them. We will pick them up.
And just before I bring Daniela in, myself and Paul have a standing invite to the union meeting, and I would be hoping that our managers will be asking the questions of the people furthest away from the right answer, because that's what you need to do in any organisation to find out your real problems. Don't ask the ones who are the yes people. Ask the no people and understand exactly. And there are routes back to myself and Paul from unions, from other linkages, etc., to find out. We've not had much of it lately. It seems to have calmed down, which again is anecdotally indicative that some of these issues have been sorted. There is a problem in both councils and across all the councils in Lancashire of churn of staff. So a lot of staff are leaving organisations, usually going for more money somewhere else, and then being replaced by new people. And therefore, as new people come in, that also destabilises the existing workforce. So there's a certain amount of grumbling and moaning that the same people aren't always there. There's a certain amount of having to get used to new people, which is difficult for people. But that's not particular to our councils or to the situation we've had. It's a general case across the board. From chief executives downwards, because I think half the chief executives in Lancashire will be gone in the next 6 months in terms of moving around. Senior managers at every level, council staff are churning like mad. Whether the situation, what Paul alluded to before, about reduction in spending affects that or not, I'm not sure. But they are generally going for more money elsewhere, and then it's a bit of a merry-go-round at the moment. But we discussed that before as well. Daniela, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. As Kim's brought us back to the staff satisfaction, I think I should comment on it. I wasn't going to because I thought it had passed. But I'd just like to say that, just confirm that I do think that the staff satisfaction is moving in the right direction. I'm curious because I think 45% is quite a good response rate. I've done surveys before and I've not had responses that high. So I think that I'd be interested to see in the report what percentage people are expecting to see. What is it, 50%? Is it 60%? Because otherwise we can go on forever and no one will ever be happy because they'll always want something higher. Even if the number agreed, if it's 39%, it means we've met the target in terms of the number of people we've consulted. In addition to that, what kind of satisfaction percentage are we looking for? Because there isn't a target again for that. As far as I can see, if you're looking at local government staff satisfaction, I think that that's quite impressive personally. But because there isn't a target, I don't know what I'm measuring it against. Is it 100% satisfaction that people want to see? So for me, I have to see what the target is, what we're trying to achieve. Otherwise, we could go on forever and ever and ever. And finally, I'd like to say that people generally, if they're not happy, are more likely to fill a satisfaction survey or write a complaint and do that online. So to get 95%, and those are the people that might not be happy, or the people that are 45% that are responding are all happy. I'm just trying to, if you can have a measure, but if it's not measured against what you're trying, what's the target that you're trying to achieve in terms of staff satisfaction? So I'd just be interested to see that. Thank you.
Before you answer that, Vicky, David, you want to come on the same point? Yeah. So we might as well take both together.
It's just in response, really. I'm not aiming at a
You're-
certain
you,
thing.
You
but
don't have to respond, that's their job. But go on, Karen.
if you're starting at 24%, I just wanted to be sure in my own mind that we hadn't simply eliminated the 50% who'd just completely given up in getting to 64. So that was the problem.
I wasn't.
Okay.
And I agree with both points, and that was a bit I was alluding to before about some slightly more sophisticated, because what I'm interested in is to know, are we reaching the same people every quarter? Is it the same people returning the forms? What we're doing to incentivise them to do that? If that's the case, is do they go into a raffle for a prize or whatever it is? Because you have to do that, don't you? I mean, the way we do it is you don't get your timesheet accepted till you fill the form in. That's why I work. You know what I mean? So that's obligatory then. If you want to get paid, you have to put "Are you happy?" report in. I'm sure that's not the council's way of doing it, but that's the private sector for you. But, because it's to address specific issues. So, yeah, I think we just need that extra finesse. But do you want to answer Aniela's original question?
So, yeah, in response to the point on the targets, I think the approach typically has been to kind of benchmark it against the main organisational staff surveys, because that kind of is a yardstick of how everyone else across the council is feeling. It's probably a decent enough comparison, and this would suggest that people in shared services are broadly more satisfied than the wider organisation. However, we will be looking to...
I'm just listening.
Peter, you're not muted. And Nina can't mute you by the look of it.
Hello. It's because you're listening to a rubbish meeting, isn't it? Right, hang on 1 second.
So yeah, in terms of the target, we tend to benchmark against the wider organisational survey, which we did way back at the beginning of the year now, and we'll be repeating again next year. This is a more frequent sort of pulse survey, the idea being that it's a kind of a more regular kind of check on people as one of a number of ways to find out how people are feeling. There's a balance between, as you say, sort of mandating people to fill it in and incentivising people versus just building that dialogue as part of the culture that we want to have, which is that people feel able to give feedback and that we've got mechanisms like this, but also anonymous feedback, staff sessions, wellbeing, whatever it is, where people feel like they can feed back to the organisation, and we've got a range of ways that they can do that. So while we do ask for kind of feedback on all of our wellbeing sessions and everything that we do with the people strategy, there does become an element of fatigue, I suppose, with feeding back on stuff. So I think for us it's more about building that into our culture, that people feel able and know where to provide feedback or give comments if they're not happy about something, or that ideally managers are kind of having those conversations with their teams and staff on a regular basis. and it's something that we're acting on. We've got a way to go to get to that. So hence, still having this pulse survey in place for now. But I think that's where we want to get to. We want to have that open culture where people feel like they can comment and give their views. Again, not everybody will feel like they can do it in a team meeting, so we still need to have a variety of channels. But that's one of the reasons for perhaps why I think 45%, you're right, is probably a good level. I mean, if we were looking at what's statistically significant, it's well above that. But I think around 50% probably feels about right to me, assuming that we're capturing the other 50% in other ways and means. So that's what I'd say on those points. If that covers it.
Okay, thank you. Gary?
Yeah, just to help out on this point, because Vicky makes a really important point about the other channels. So following the last survey, I met with the customer service staff, and they have a very strong rep. And not everybody has to attend the meetings, but I know that rep in customer services talks to every member of staff before she comes to any meeting to say, what are your issues? So we've got a whole list, back to Vicky's point about it being the richness of the conversation. We had a whole list of issues that they wanted resolution to. Some of it was around change. The majority of it, interestingly, was around ICT. And some historic things that hadn't been sorted. So we've spent time and effort and resource to try and resolve some of those real long-standing issues that hadn't been resolved. But that dialogue does take place, and I know that individual talks to every member of staff before we have the dialogue with management. So I know we're getting that feedback now.
Okay, helpful. And I think we need to remember where we come from on this. We did ask officers at the last meeting or the meeting before, whichever one it was, to get a grip on this, to, for want of a better word, find out what the problems were and to deal with them. And the only way they've done that is to have some intensive questioning of staff. We've now got the risk, like Vicky says, of people being over surveyed and over asked for the response. And like I've told you, I've thought 3 times this year, don't ask me again. So I think we just need to give it a bit of space and see how it goes for the next few months and then come back again. But all the comments are certainly noted. Okay. Any other comments at all? Questions on that report? Anything on the appendices, on the performance indicators? Hello, Margaret, yes.
I'm just looking at agenda page 32 there. Are we confident that we can pick up the scores on the freedom of information request? Because it seems to have fallen off a cliff, really, between 91% down to 56%. And I accept what you say about staffing issues and so on and so forth. But are we confident we can claw that back within the current fiscal year, or is it still going to be? There must be quite a considerable backlog built up now, I guess. Thanks.
So without going too much to my roots of a performance advisor, we won't be able to get it back because it's reported over a year figure. So once you get to 50%, it's never going to get up to 90-odd%. But we will get a lot better. We've got some temporary capacity in place who's already getting stuff sorted in terms of the responses. But because some of them have been late, those ones that have passed and are late will always be late. But we've got capacity in place and we're getting back on track with the service that we're delivering, which I think is the important one.
Okay. And 2 points on that. I think legal file's been opened in, 5 days. If I see the word legal on it, I open it straight away. I don't quite know what a lot are doing, but anyway.
But of course, this is lawyers opening their files. So,
yeah, it's probably in a pile somewhere. And secondly, Peter Malpass indicate, the main protagonist of FOIs in Chorley, so as long as he's quiet, we'll be fine. Yeah, you can tell him I said that, Alan. So that's fine. Okay. Anything else at all anybody's thought of? In which case, we have to ask to note that report. Are we all happy to note it? And hopefully we'll get another report. Will it be the next quarter at December time, will it? Is that when the next quarter finishes? Which one's the next meeting? Okay, I don't have an item on here for any other business or anything urgent. Has anybody got anything urgent or any other business? Because it's quite a quick meeting, so if anybody's got anything about shared services. No? In which case, thank you all very much for your attendance this evening. And we'll see you in... When's the next meeting? Anybody have any ideas, Nina? December. Christmas do, Nina? Mince pies, sherry.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Did you? Sorry, I didn't see you.